First of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So yeah, Nick Shaw, co-founder and CEO of RP Strength. Been around now for something like 11 or 12 years since Dr. Mike and I first really got going. And I just kind of always grew up knowing that I like sports. I liked fitness. And so it was a pretty natural thing. Like I went to school at University of Michigan and studied kinesiology and more specifically sport management, which fell under the kinesiology umbrella at Michigan. So just kind of always knew I was going to do something like that. And then, funny enough, I met Dr. Mike my sophomore year in college at Michigan in a student weight room. We hit it off. He convinced me to dabble in some powerlifting. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I could see why people like this. So you kind of channel that like competitive spirit a little bit from, not really having an outlet after high school sports. And so, yeah, I was pretty much hooked right away. And then after dabbled in powerlifting, dabbled in bodybuilding a little bit. This is 2008, 2007, 2008, something like that. So good bit ago. And ever since then, just really kind of got me into the fitness realm. And once I graduated college, well, actually, we moved out to New York and we were both personal trainers for a while. And that's kind of where the whole fitness journey really kicked off.
So for you, you mentioned high school sports. Was that something that led to the weights, or did the weights kind of lead more to the sports, or which one was it for you?
Ooh, yeah, good question. So I remember what really got me into lifting was I had a brother who was 4 years older than me. So we never were in high school at the same time. So I think he was a senior, I was in eighth grade. And so when I was a freshman, he was, moving on to college. But I just remember that he started lifting for sports. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, well, my older brother's lifting. I guess, it's time to hop in and start lifting with him. So that was really when I got started. And I probably started when I was around like 12 or 13, something like that. Of course, nothing serious. If you remember back in the day, we had one of those like skinny weight benches with a really skinny bar and you had to put on the sand plates. Like that's what we had to start. So, yeah, that's going way back. But I always just, I don't know, it was fun. Like something always drew me to lifting weights. So the whole idea of getting better was just I don't know, fascinated me and kind of it stuck because here I am, 23 years later. I think we had one of those like Weider weight machines where it wasn't like you're sitting up like you are in a chair like this and you just sort of press out and then it's got like some of the weird contraptions around it and we didn't really know what we were doing but of course we'd play around with it a little bit and then I think it was like my uncle who had a really old weight set, the one with all the sand weights, and he whatever was moved out or something, and so that's how we got it because my mom was like, "Hey, you guys want these weights?" And we're like, "Yes, of course, right?" Like it's the best thing in the world. So yeah, it's awesome, man.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. So when you got into the weight room in college, was that something where you really kind of went in with just like oh, this is what I want to do, or this is what I want to achieve, or at that point for you was it still a lot of like learning and growing, or what was the kind of the mission or the goal if there was when you initially got into the gym there?
Yeah, I think luckily enough in high school, so my sophomore year in high school, we had a class called Advanced PE, and all it was a weightlifting class. And so I took that for 3 years in high school, and I think he was the assistant football coach, was the gym teacher who taught that. And so we at least had some idea of like decent form, and by no means great form, but enough that, we were squatting probably close to parallel. He, taught us how to do some cleans and, just enough so we weren't doing anything too stupid. And I want to say we ran like the bigger, faster, stronger program. So it'd be like 10, 8, 6 for a couple weeks or 1 week. I forget the exacts. And then it was like fives and it was threes. And like maybe you would max and you would kind of just repeat that. And it's, obviously like way too linear. So we would go through a whole program, max out, and then we'd repunch in our numbers and we'd look at the numbers and be like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Of course, we could never match those because there was way too much. And so I always kind of had like some program. And so it was maybe like slightly better off than just completely winging it. But it wasn't until I actually met Mike in my sophomore year there where he's like, yeah, you got to start doing things a little bit differently, start planning stuff. And that's when it started to make a little bit more sense to me of like, oh, I kind of see, all right, there is sort of like a logical progression you can do on stuff. And oh, okay. But, back then when we started, we didn't even know what a deload was. And so it was, essentially linear periodization, right? You just go up week after week after week after week. And then funny enough, I remember we did that for like 2 or 3 weeks, and we went from like 315 for like say like a 10, 315 for 10 squat, to like 325 for 10, to like 335 like that next week. It was like six. Like, what's going on here? Like, it shouldn't be that big of a drop off. And that was like one of the first signs we're like, oh, like maybe you actually need to back off and then you can kind of like, come back up, so almost like a wave program, something like that. And so it's just like you learn a lot, I think, from kind of trial and error if you have the right mindset of like, all right, let's sort of play around, let's tinker with stuff. Let's see if this works a little bit better than this. And like that's really the true origins of like how RP started was Mike sort of work more or less doing that on himself and some of our like close friends that all lifted together. And then we sort of pick up some best practices. And then, fast forward a few years later, that's when we started working with like clients online and stuff. And that was still in the early days of online coaching too, because this is, I don't know, circa 2012, let's call it, something like that. So it's like all of it led to a bunch of experimentation on ourselves in order to eventually be like, oh, okay, this works pretty well. We think this is the right approach. And then you can start applying that with people that are, actually paying you money.
Did you have that experience of like at the beginning, maybe thinking, all right, this works for me. Why isn't this working for someone else too?
Yeah, a little bit. We definitely made some mistakes. Like we thought you kind of just want to get as big as possible, and that was the best way to put on muscle. And well, it's a good way to put on weight, good way to, I guess, get a little bit stronger. But we ended up getting like way too big, and you put on a bunch of excess body fat, and we did. I remember working with some clients early on, and would kind of repeat that a little bit, not to the same extent that we did, because it's okay. Like you're okay experimenting or tinkering a little bit more with yourself, hopefully, than people that are actually paying you money. But it's definitely one of those things where you look at yourself, you're like, okay, well, like I can do this. This seems like a repeatable process. Now let's try it with some clients. Is it also repeatable? If so, yes, great. That's even more signal that like this is a really good approach. But if not, all right, let's sort of go back to the drawing board and rethink this. And at least there's a couple of us. Like I would start working with some clients online. Mike was working with some clients, and we kind of trade some stories and what was working, what wasn't working back and forth a little bit, especially early on to, and that kind of helped raise the bar a little bit over time.
Well, with kind of learning different techniques and new techniques and trying new things out, for you, was that something that ever, I want to say intimidated you, but did you ever feel like any sense of overwhelm knowing like, oh man, there's not just one good way or one right way per se to do this. There's a lot of potential ways to get a job done.
Yeah, I totally know what you're getting at. I'm probably a real outlier in this situation because I had, Dr. Mike as a mentor really early on to kind of help guide that process of like he already had some things that were on the right track, some that weren't quite figured out yet. So it was a really good sort of thing for me to hop into because I didn't really have to be overwhelmed because I was like, oh, like I trust this guy. I know he's really smart. I know he's sort of doing a lot of the research. He's going to school for this. So when he graduated from Michigan, he had his master's degree in strength and conditioning, and then he went back and got his PhD in sport physiology. And so it was like I kind of always, it was basically like I was getting that same education and knowledge through him, through one of my best friends slash ended up being my business partner. So it kind of all trickled down to me a little bit in some capacity. So like I totally know what you're saying. And when you really get started as a coach, there is so much information that it's kind of hard to sort through and figure out what works and what doesn't work, or if people are kind of just full of BS or not. So I absolutely was very lucky in that regard, and that I had a pretty good, kind of coach and mentor to help guide that process for me.
So with that being said, do you feel like because you had, I don't know the best word, the only thing that came to my head initially was like a fresh brain, like you didn't have the knowledge that he had and you're working kind of together on certain things. Do you feel like maybe you brought like a different perspective into things that maybe opened his eyes to certain things, or, like he might have had like maybe preconceived notions about something where you didn't know anything about it. So you're like asking maybe questions he didn't think about before, or just kind of bringing new things to his kind of idea scope?
A little bit. It was always kind of like, hey, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Hey, what about this? So I wonder if we could tweak this a little bit. And there's always some element of that. I think probably the thing that I brought most to the table was just kind of a completely different personality than him. And so, I always kind of like to say when you're starting a business, like that can be a really good thing because then you allow each side to sort of focus on what they're good at. And the things that he was really good at, sort of behind the scenes stuff, designing some of the programs, writing the books, content, that's his area of expertise. And that's why he does so well on YouTube now because he's very good at teaching stuff. Whereas my skill set was more of, hey, I'm maybe a bit more of a type A personality. Like I'm going to be the guy, attention to detail, responding to all the emails, making sure everything's set up and, all that stuff. And so it worked very well. And so we were able to sort of specialize. So that I would say that's probably more of what I brought to the table in that department.
So after, working kind of together for a few years and obviously too kind of like figuring things out a little bit for yourself and that in maybe the world of fitness, but also in your own kind of fitness journey, if you will, a little bit. At what point did you start to feel like, I guess maybe gain some confidence in regards to like, all right, I'm not just this person who's learning it anymore. Like I'm also, I feel confident in sharing it. I feel confident in telling someone, hey, this is something that should work for you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it probably took at least a few months after starting to work with. Well, so let me back up a little bit. So I was working with people in person as a personal trainer in New York City. So I was able to develop some of that skill set and confidence of, all right, so I'm going to sort of coach people this way and I'm going to teach them, these lifts and kind of try to program stuff a little bit. But a lot of times you're training general fitness people in New York, like they don't really care about periodized programs. Like they just want to get results. So it was a little bit different. But, I always tell people if you want to get into online coaching, I think a great way to start is you start training people in person because you gotta interact with people and you gotta be able to listen. You got to be able to, deal with a bunch of different personalities. Like that's a skill set. You develop that over time. And then you start working with people online, it's not that big of a deal because you're like, oh, I've already done this before. And so that carries over confidence into online coaching. But I do remember the very first diet I ever wrote for this woman. I think she was in like Washington, D.C. Man, I was so nervous to send that out. I was pretty confident. I was like, okay, I've kind of done this before a little bit with no one's ever paid me money before. But I just remember I gave her a bunch of extra food because I was so nervous to like reduce it down. I'm like, oh man, I don't know, this seems too much. I don't want to give her too little. And I just remember like the first, I sent it out. And then when she comes back with questions, she's almost like, this seems like too much food. And I'm like, oh shoot, oh man, did I do it right? I don't know. So they're definitely like, I totally can relate to people. Like when you first start out, yeah, it's a little nerve wracking. Try to work with people in person, see if you can build up some of that skill set and confidence. But even then, that being said, now there's so much more resources out there. You can go get some online certifications. You can learn how other successful people have already coached people in nutrition. So I feel like you can bypass quite a bit of that to have a good working understanding. We just didn't really have that back then. I just kind of had, one person that would kind of give me some templates to work off of, and then I would go in and customize them. But yeah, I totally remember being like totally panicked when I sent that first diet, thinking, "Oh God, like, uh, oh, this poor woman." Yeah, I'm pretty sure things went okay though, because then you start tweaking things along the way. Probably the biggest mistake that I made, if I think back to that, was thinking that like the original program had to be, quote unquote, perfect. And you don't realize that's actually not how it works. You have to be pretty close, but it's all about the feedback and then modifying it sort of based on their feedback and that kind of ebb and flow along the way. Like that's really what coaching is, not like sending them this perfect plan right from the start.
Well, do you think that's an interesting point? Do you think that a lot of it at the beginning stages of working with somebody is kind of just like I don't want to say general, throwing something general at them, but it's more along the lines of like, I guess from what you're saying, like, let's just see how you respond. And based on that, like we can make more particular, more specific tweaks based on how those responses happen.
Yeah, I think so when you're first starting, because we always had some templates that we worked off of. So someone would send me their questionnaire, I would look through it, review it, and I would, look at their body size. All right, well, this is a 145-pound female. Okay, well, like here's kind of a template that I had roughly laid out for a female that's going to weigh about 150. Do I think this matches up with what she said? I'd go in and move some meal times around and probably change some of the amounts. And like that's a good starting point. And almost rarely would I take that exact template and send it. Like it's going to be modified in some capacity. So I think that's okay to start from. Because I do remember, if we go way back, I do remember one person sort of he essentially fired me as their nutrition coach because he made that same mistake where he thought like the original diet needed to be perfect for him. I'm like, that doesn't, the initial program that you send to somebody, man, that's really hard to make it perfect. Because you just have a questionnaire really that you're working from, and all this information that they provided you. So you're like, okay, I think I can get pretty close. And then as over time you get closer and closer and closer, and you're like, you feel very, very confident in sending that out. Still not perfect though. It's still going to need some of that feedback coming back from the individual to then tweak it. So I just do remember that stuck out to me as like, this guy thought that I could, nail, his exact body the very first time from just this limited information. That doesn't seem like the right approach. But, at that point, couldn't really explain it to him. And, sometimes things don't work out.
Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. The Weight Room Podcast is thrilled to announce our new sponsor, Prime Science. They're leaders in harnessing scientific research to revolutionize your fitness journey. With a firm foundation in the latest health sciences, Prime Science offers innovative products to help you achieve and surpass your fitness and health goals. These tools are more than just accessories. They're the result of rigorous scientific research aimed at optimizing your health. Dive deeper into how you can transform your approach to fitness at primescience.co.uk. Trust me, with Prime Science, you're in scientifically sound hands. Did you start to add in like, hey, this might take a certain period of time before you do start to see results, just because of kind of what you were talking about before with people maybe questioning, why am I not seeing it right away?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's part of this, the experience and the art of coaching is you start picking up on things, and then you start picking up on trends and specific questions that clients will ask you. And so then when you send a program, you can kind of preface it by saying, hey, this is the original plan. I need your feedback 2 to 3 times a week. And based on that feedback, I can then come in and modify it to what you're saying. And there's that ebb and flow along the way of, if you stop giving me feedback, I can't modify stuff. So I need your feedback along the way. I need you to let me know of X, Y, and Z. Hey, you got a big event coming up, or you've got a work trip, whatever it is, like you need to tell me this stuff. You give me that feedback, then I can come back and give you some strategies on how to work around that. And that's really what the coaching interaction is. It's not like a one-time set it and forget it thing. It's like you're paying for coaching. You're paying for the back and forth. So you're asking questions. You're talking about specific circumstances and situations that you have, and then I give you the feedback of, hey, you need to do this, or hey, maybe you can do this, or hey, I'll give you these couple options. I don't necessarily know which one's going to be right for you. You pick the one that you think sounds right for you, and then they implement that. They're, hey, that worked really well, or they say, yeah, I tried that, wasn't that great. Are there other ways to modify it? And we say, okay, cool, yeah, in the future we can do X, Y, and Z. So that's absolutely part of it. Is you got to sort of set the expectations up front for the client of what is going to happen, in the next couple weeks, couple months, whatever.
So, you mentioned kind of how the online coaching space was much different, and, the 2012 kind of time period, and just with a change in technology and a change in, I think, an attitude generally towards fitness and an attitude towards like online coaching in general. There's been a lot of cultural and technological changes, even, just a few years after that, and how that evolves a few years after that. And, who knows in a few years what it'll look like. But I mean, what are some of the big things that you noticed, even just going along a few years in working with people, that maybe it was an attitude change, from the consumer's end, or maybe it was how you handled things, just from an organizational standpoint, or just any of those things? Like, how did you see it just begin to evolve?
There's probably a couple that stand out to me. So when we were working with like a lot of weightlifters and CrossFitters early on, and so at the time paleo was all the rage. And so when RP came in, we were like, hey, you can actually eat carbohydrates and you can still lose weight and you can perform pretty well. And so that was like pretty radical at the time, because nowadays, like, I don't really see anything about paleo online anymore. It's pretty much gone to the wayside. So like that was a huge change on the consumer side. So that was one. I mean, nowadays you have Zoom and you have so many different like video technologies. I don't really think that was much of a thing until 2018, 19, obviously it sort of exploded during COVID year in 2020, but 2012, 2013, I don't really remember that being a thing. Like maybe you had Skype, but now there's a lot more interaction. I think there's a lot more touch points where you can get on a Zoom call, whatever it is, you can hop on, FaceTime or something. You can talk to clients one on one, and it makes it a lot easier to communicate back and forth. So that's probably a big deal. Number three was this is something that we did in 2015 was just kind of the whole idea of like email automations. And so we were selling digital products at the time and being able to automate that whole process instead of me having to do it manually. Oh, that was a complete game changer for us because it allowed more of my time to be spent doing other stuff instead of all this like menial tasks of literally just kind of copy pasting emails and sending stuff out to people. So like those are three that kind of jump out to me.
Well, because of that technological shift, and because things are becoming more like capable of being automated or capable of being done, not like necessarily by like an AI in certain ways, but certain things can be done by AI. I mean, what do you see from like a business aspect that you have been able to achieve and open more doors and maybe do different things because you're not doing the menial things, you're not doing the things that can be done by automation now?
Yeah. So when I had to stop doing a lot of that manual work and could start shifting focus elsewhere. So it led to, well, one sort of that like kind of hockey stick trajectory because now, I could go do more marketing stuff. I could go do more social media. I could go interact with more athletes and influencers, et cetera. So that's where I put a lot of my time. And then on Dr. Mike's side of thing, we kind of always knew that. So if you have, going back to the updates you have to make for clients, we were pretty confident that we, could set up some algorithms of like, hey, when someone stalls out here, assuming good adherence, of course, that's kind of the basis of everything, assuming they're actually following the plan. Like, hey, like we would probably do this next. And then if that solves out, we would do this and we would do this. And she kind of built in some algorithms. So at the time, we went from selling digital diet templates, whether Excel files or PDFs, to we wanted to build an app. And so that became the foundation for the RP Diet Coach app because we thought we could, systematize that process a little bit more. So those are really probably the two big things that I would call out there.
With that being said, with increase in technology and stuff like that, how have you maybe seen it from the negative side though, looking at the industry from like people, it kind of went from like I think a lot of people maybe selling um very generalized programs to now people selling still maybe somewhat general but more based around like certain maybe be an algorithm or whatever artificial intelligence you get thrown out there. Like how have you maybe seen that take like a negative spin instead of people utilizing the positivity, the possibilities of kind of more, still enhancing that customer experience and still being with your customer and that kind of thing. But instead of doing that, you're kind of being like, all right, I'm just here to make, I'm just here to make money. I don't want
Yeah.
to talk to the person. I don't want to interact. I don't want to do any of that. So I guess in some ways, like, have you seen that become more of a problem? Have you seen maybe people just catch on and be like, all right, I can notice this now, then I'm not going to deal with that coach anymore? Like, what have you just seen in those regards?
Yeah. Yeah. I think earlier on, um, that was a thing where people just try to send really essentially like the same program to kind of everyone, all their clients. And like that I don't love. Because even when we were doing templates, they were always customized based on so your sex and then your body weight. Now this would be like a body weight range, let's call it like 10 or 15 pounds, but it's still customized. You're not going to send a 220-pound male the same thing as 150-pound female. Like that doesn't make any sense. And so I think sometimes, yeah, people are chasing a quick buck. They kind of just send these very generic programs that are essentially just carbon copies of one another to kind of everyone. Not cool. Don't do that. That sort of gives coaches in the online space a really bad rap. I think that's maybe a little bit more prevalent in like, or at least it was in like the bodybuilding circles where it would be like, telling people exactly what to eat at every single meal. We were never really huge fans of that either. We'd say, hey, here's like a choice of 10 foods in each of these categories. Here's the amounts, here's the timing. You can pick whatever foods you want. Because like as long as you're hitting your calories and macros, like that's really the main thing. Of course, there's some other things you can fine tune in there, absolutely. So like that was more of a thing, I think, kind of early on. Now I think it's more of probably two things. people using EAs or VAs to farm out a lot of the behind the scenes work. Maybe or maybe not they're interacting with the client. I hope that they're interacting with the client. I've started to hear some stuff more recently of people trying to spin AI to replace this like EA VA side of things, where AI is kind of doing everything. Well, I I'm not so sure on that. On the one hand, if you call that out and you're making it clear, so like we have apps. We're not leading anyone to believe that you're working with one of our coaches. Like, no, this you're paying $20, $30 a month to access this app that has all this stuff programmed in for you, and it takes your feedback and then it will adjust for you. But what I've heard recently is people trying to take AI, charge the same high prices for one-on-one coaching, that like premium top shelf VIP level coaching, and farm essentially all of it out. Now that I gotta start questioning and be like, okay, that seems like an integrity thing. Maybe you can charge half of that if you let people know that, you'll whatever interact with them once or, whatever it is, but you have to let people know up front. Otherwise, I don't agree with that. That's way too shady. Like I'm not on board with that at all. And so, yeah, AI is great, can do a lot of really cool things, and it's probably going to make the world a lot better place, but there is some slippery slopes that come with it. So I think there's two big things that 20 years would be a really long time. I bet there will be something closer sooner. But yeah, for right now, one-on-one human coaching, empathy. I am a fellow human. I know what you're going through. I've been through the trials and tribulations before, so I know exactly what you're feeling. Or even if you don't know exactly what someone's feeling, you have an idea because we are human. We can connect on that wavelength. Two, the accountability. There's just something to be said. I know sometimes, I'll hire a coach, not in the fitness sphere, just because I know that I have to report and sort of tell them what my progress is. So it holds me more accountable because I know that another human is judging me. I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but like that's a big deal in fitness. Like that's why a lot of people hire a coach. They're like, oh man, yeah, like I kind of know what I need to do, but I kind of just need someone to hold me accountable and make sure I'm doing the things that I need to. Oh my gosh, well, that requires a human. I mean, you can do some of that via AI, but it's just not the same. You can lie to that and it's not going to matter. Like our diet coach app, y- you can lie to it. It doesn't know. Like you can set meal reminders and it'll shoot you a notification on your phone or on your smartwatch so you can mimic it, but you can't quite replicate it. It's just something that we can't do with AI yet. So totally, those are two huge things.
I've never thought about it like that, but it's kind of like a like your alarm clock, right? Like you can hit snooze on it as many times as you want. It's
Yes.
not gonna yell at you. It's not gonna make you feel bad. It's not gonna do anything. But a person trying to wake you up, you're gonna feel kind of bad if you're just like ignoring that person. But no,
Yeah,
that's a funny way
spot
to
on.
look
That's
at
a
it.
great analogy. That's a perfect one. Yep,
But
100%.
I think it will be interesting to see kind of where the perfect, if there is one, kind of marriage between technology and human interaction in the coaching space. Because whether it's business coaching or fitness coaching or whatever, you're that's what a lot of it is. Especially at a higher level, like you're just
Mhm.
looking for someone to make minor tweaks and to hold you accountable. I mean, I talked to a ton of bodybuilders who, they have a ton of knowledge when it comes to training and diet and all the things that is involved in it, but they still have coaches. And
Mhm.
I don't know if, like we're saying, I don't know if that is gonna be replaced by just, fully replaced at least by just a some sort of robotic kind of system. How do you decide, like maybe even for like the coaching and being a client, like both sides? I mean, how do you decide like what is best for you on on any given maybe relationship? It could be different, but how do you decide like, okay, I know I need to be more personal in this aspect, and in this aspect, I know that I can get away with maybe a little more simulation or whatever you call it. I can get away with a little
Mhm.
bit more just letting technology take over in this realm. Is it kind of a hard and fast for you, or is it based on each kind of individual situation and relationship?
Yeah, I think it always depends on the individual because sometimes you get people that come in that want to ask a lot of questions up front because like, yep, okay, explain this to me. All right, why are we doing this? Okay, and you explain it to them. They're like, great, got it, and they're just off to the races they want to execute. And those are the In my experience, those are kind of the best clients because they want the base understanding up front, and then they'll just report in. Like that's so when I did a bodybuilding show last summer, I mean that's I hired one of our RP coaches, Jared Feather. That's exactly what I did. It's like, Jared, just tell me the plan. You tell me the plan, my job is to execute it. And so in that regard, you could, be a bit more robotic with someone like that. But like when the show was coming up, well, I was like, oh, okay, Jared. Oh, no, 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 no. Okay, now I've got a lot of questions. Now I need a very detailed plan. But hey, I also realized, and he told me, he was like, we're gonna have to modify this as it goes. We're gonna have to see, hey, how are you looking, right? Because then we'll start to manipulate water and sodium and carbs. So he's like, I need pictures, I need updates. And so that requires a lot of back and forth. So I think there's always a give and take to it, where sometimes like you're just going to get clients that are pretty needy and they might be paying more for that like human element, that human interaction. Like they just kind of want someone to hear them out, and they want someone that can be, you know uh their support, someone that can kind of lean on. That's totally fine, right? A lot of people pay for coaching for that very reason. So I don't think there's really a hard set answer for that. I do think when it comes to like what can you automate for almost everyone, a lot of the menial stuff, like you said, is there a way to maybe set up some automatic reminders to go out? Hey, I need your weight update. Hey, I need, is there a way? Hey, don't forget to log your steps today, your meal, like whatever it is. That stuff, awesome. Automate that out because then here's the way I would approach it. Because I think this is, in my opinion, this is the perfect marriage with AI and how you coach people one on one. The AI does all that menial stuff, just that boring, repetitive stuff that you can do as a human, but you're probably better off just automating it. So your free time is then devoted just to interacting with the clients, asking them the questions, digging a little bit deeper, seeing what's going on. That to me is like the perfect marriage because you're not stuck doing a lot of that, boring stuff that it gets kind of old, let's be honest. And, now that we have the technology to automate that, great. Let's do that, but let's not get the automation into the human relationship aspect. If we can keep those separate, that to me is the ultimate way to marry them together.
That's an interesting kind of way to say it. And it made me think like utilizing artificial intelligence or whatever technology to the degree where you're actually having more time to enhance that client's
Yep.
experience, whether it be with more
Yep.
interactions or learning more so you can provide better information or plan or whatever. What is it about the competitive side of fitness and, just getting out there and becoming part of, if you want to call it part of that side of the community versus, the coaching side, like what is it about it that just draws you to that?
I think there's probably two parts to it. One is being able to walk the walk and talk the talk. When you go back to that human empathy part we mentioned earlier, if you have any interest in coaching competitive physique athletes, whether it's bodybuilding, figure, etc., I don't know how you do it if you have not competed yourself before. It is really hard because you just don't quite understand it until you've been through the rigors of it, of the last couple weeks of dieting when, let's be honest, everything sucks. It's really hard to relate to people unless you've been through it yourself. And then you're like, I get it. Here are some tips on how to potentially deal with it. Here's what I did. So, like, that's a big one. Also, kind of just wanting to do hard stuff. I don't know, man. This is maybe all like genetics. I'm not sure. I have always been wired where I have not wanted to kind of do the easy or average thing. I was like, sign me up for not wanting to be like everyone else. Whatever, contrarian thinking, probably wired like that because I still make some of those choices today. Someone's like, hey, you need to, go get this phone or this device or whatever. I'm probably not getting that one. I'm going to go with something else. I'm an Android user. I don't use an iPhone. Kind of for that reason. Now, there's some other reasons too, because we have to deal with Apple for other reasons. So I kind of joke on that front, but like it's always been a little bit ingrained to me of like, I'm okay doing different stuff. And being a bodybuilder, you're completely different. You're, the 0.1% of the world. Everyone else thinks you're absolutely nuts. And by the way, they're correct. Bodybuilders are nuts. So those are like the two things. I kind of love. I want to be able to say that I've done it. So if I want to work with top level athletes, I can absolutely do that. And then just, I don't know, man, just doing hard stuff, just pushing the envelope, seeing what you're really capable of. There's something to that I really love.
So it sounds like for you, it's more of the process than the outcome that is the what kind of matters more to
Ooh.
you. The Weight Room Podcast is proud to be partnered with Prime Science, our new sponsor and a trailblazer in health technology. Prime Science is dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what's possible in health and fitness through extensive research and scientific validation. Their products are a testament to their commitment to safe, scientifically backed health optimization. To learn more about how Prime Science is redefining fitness with valid science, visit primescience.co.uk. Join us in embracing a future where fitness meets rigorous scientific practice with Prime Science. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
Yeah, okay. So 100%. Because I started competing when I was like 20 years old, competed a couple times in my early 20s, and then ended up taking like almost a decade off before I got back on stage again just a couple years ago. And then, I was lucky, fortunate enough. I was, kind of always wanted to get my pro card. That'd be cool. That's kind of what I want to aim for. And then, like, first national level show I ever did, I won my pro card. And I remember being very happy. I was very happy that night. And then like the next day, it's like, that was cool and all. What what am I supposed to do now? Because I thought it would take me a couple times, right? And I would like, oh, this is going to be like a couple year process where, I'll compete, get some feedback, come back, try to get better the next year. Like there is that love of the process. There's just that always wanting to get better. And I I will not use, it would be wrong if I use the word disappointed. And again, you could go compete as a pro, but there's just some trade-offs there I'm not willing to make. But yeah, it's the love of the process of just doing that. It's not, yeah, the winning the pro card or whatever was cool. Don't get me wrong, absolutely awesome. Super happy that I achieved it. It's behind me in the video here, so damn right I'm proud of that. But there is a little bit of that, like, well, what do I do now? Huh.
So how do you continue to, I guess, push yourself in that way when like, okay,
Yeah.
the plan
Yeah.
didn't necessarily go as planned?
Totally. I remember in the contest prep, I was like, I don't control the outcome. It's a subjective sport, right? So who knows? But there's a handful of things I can always control. I can always control my training. I can always make sure I'm hitting the right reps, all of that fully within my control. Nutrition. Yes, I control what goes in my mouth. I can follow the plan. Jared gives me the plan. I execute the plan. Jared tells me to do this. I do it. Simple. Got that part. Can I get in the number of steps that I need to hit every single day? Making sure I'm getting all my cardio. Yep, can control that. What about supplements? All this stuff. Absolutely. I can control all of that. And I would remind myself of that every single day. I'm only in control of these things, right? And I'm in control of how I think. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to stay positive, right? Even, when you're hungry and hangry and all that stuff, kind of do your best. Never perfect, of course, but you do your best. So that was one thing. That was in the lead up. And then what I've noticed with a lot of clients before, and this is something we see all the time, and like we've got a big Facebook group for our clients. I will say that for many people, the post-diet, like maintenance phase, is harder than dieting because a lot of people can get locked in. You get laser focus, tunnel focus when you've got a goal to achieve that you're trying to hit. It's easier, all relative, right? Easier to stay on track because you have something that you're aiming for. Once you hit that, right? So someone's trying to lose 15 pounds, go from 150 to 135. All right. They can stay on track until they get there. They hit 135 and then they're like, all right, now it's time to maintain. Start eating a little bit more. Ooh, a lot of times people have a real hard psychological time with that. And so what I always try to tell people and what I kind of try to remind myself of is like, can I set some little short-term goals or maybe more performance focused now? Of like, I'm not really worried about the weight. I'm not trying to be, as lean as I possibly can. Hey, now it's time to maybe switch focus to hitting some PRs in the gym, something like that. That's how I try to set it up in my head because otherwise it is totally, totally very hard to do psychologically when you kind of reach your goal. Like, what do I
Yeah.
do now?
Well, that's interesting because I was talking to a bodybuilder who'd competed for over 20 years, and they had achieved quite a bit in the sport. Went to the Masters Olympia like right before they retired, and they kind of had the same sentiment of like, how do you go from being that level of athlete, that level of discipline, that level of
Mhm.
sticking to something for that long to now not having like that direction, not having that something to shoot for.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that you have to like really search your soul and on some level and be like, well, what is important to me? Like
yeah.
what do I care about? What do I want?
Totally. It is very hard. Kind of reminds me of the, I think, documentary that Michael Phelps did, where they talk about just how a lot of athletes just kind of go off the deep end after, because it's like a 4-year training block, essentially, that you are going for. Man, that's a big chunk of these people's lives. If they're 20, 24, I mean, you're talking, quarter, 20% of their life. So what do you do when your whole identity is wrapped up in that and then you're just kind of done? Like it's really hard to get back on it. And I think that does come back if you can just get back to that love of the process. It's easier said than done, of course, but I don't know, man. I don't know what the right answer is. I think it's going to vary from person to person. Some people might just want to get out entirely, and some people are like, no, I just like I love lifting. I'm not ever going to stop lifting. But it was like, well, I can probably scale things back a little bit. I don't have to me, it's like the lifting hasn't changed a whole lot. But to me, I can ease up on the nutrition part a little bit. And like I don't want to go back to that stage where, because I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, I'm trying to run a business. I'm like, I just don't want to get to that point where everything sucks. And I just kind of don't like I don't like anything. It's just not too fun. Like competing to me is not all that much fun, especially the last few weeks. You get to the day of and all that. Like that's totally cool. I like that, although no one really likes the tan stuff either. So there's some weird elements to it for sure, but I don't know. It's just I'm never gonna stop lifting. I'll keep doing that, but can I change some other things? Maybe have a little bit more fun, a little more flexibility and freedom. If my kids want to go get some ice cream, like yeah, we're going to. I don't have to be. That to me is sort of the best part. Like achieved what I wanted to achieve. I can still keep lifting. I can still, be pretty healthy, but I don't have to dial it up to that sort of nth degree on the nutrition and general suck factor.
Kind of looking into the future for you. You kind of mentioned it there, with the family and business and just fitness in general. You don't want to stop. You don't want to be get out of that kind of routine or that kind of just the fun of it. But what does the future look like? In the next 5 to 10 years for you?
I would say as I've gotten a little bit older, it's changed a little bit to now the focus is really on like, how can we do some really cool stuff at RP to help as many people as we can? So like right now, the YouTube channel is like literally reaching millions of people every single day. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It's like, how can we enhance that even more? Are there ways that we can, take the success of the YouTube and our apps and can we like funnel that back into different areas. And so a couple that stand out to me are can we help donate to research labs around the world that are doing research into kinesiology into stuff around hypertrophy, fat loss, body composition, because like that's our area, that's our lane that we want to be in. Or can we create our own scholarship, so kids that are going to school that want to study this stuff. I mean, I didn't have very many scholarships when I went to school and had to, work a couple jobs all through college in order to help pay for it and all that. So like, hey, is this our way of giving back for people that want to go into these fields? Can we do more of that? Because like right now we've got a scholarship set up at the University of Michigan, but the way like when you start getting into big universities, there's a lot of red tape around stuff. And so most of it just kind of sets in the endowment. And like I get it, it's just growing and growing, but you can only kick off a little bit each year. And so you're really limited by what you do. And they pick all the winners and all that. We don't really have any say over it. We just kind of have the name on the scholarship, which is cool. They send us information about who the kids are each year. It's awesome to read through that. But it's like we can amplify our reach and impact by if we did more of that stuff ourselves. So like right now, I'm in the process of setting up a nonprofit so we can put money into it. We can have people apply and then we can just give the scholarships out ourselves. So maybe it's, you know, 5 a year, or I don't know, maybe we decided to reduce the amount a little bit, but get it out to, 10, 20 people. Like that's kind of what I'm focused on now because it's just like this cool kind of positive feedback loop Whereas like the more people watch the channel, support our apps and do all that, well, then now we can take that and we can now go help more people. And then, as we help more people, then it probably comes like, it just kind of keeps repeating over and over into just more and more people win. Everyone wins. Like that's really, I would say my big thing is just looking into outcomes of like, well, how can we create win-wins here where we can just help more people, and chances are, they're going to think that's cool, and then they'll end up helping us right back. And, that's, I don't know, man. I don't think things get any better than that.
I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing a little bit about yourself tonight.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks so much. It is really cool. When you mentioned the smaller size businesses, I just think like that's usually how really cool things start, because like a lot of people are just really passionate about the same kind of general area or subject. And yeah, if you get enough people to do that, like some pretty cool stuff can grow from it. And I think I've been super fortunate to have, a great team around, and we're sort of all aligned on what that is that we're trying to do. And yeah, just keep making our stuff better, and then we can kind of just keep funneling it right back in, and helping out as many people as we can. And it's a really, really cool thing. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man, and can talk a little bit about it. And hopefully, people that are listening are like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And maybe I'll go, check them out. And I would encourage people to check out, we've got so much free content on our YouTube channel. It's Renaissance Periodization, or just search like Dr. Mike, anything kind of Dr. Mike bodybuilding, whatever, like he's going to be the first one to pop up on there. And yeah, just enjoy all the free content. It's he's a great teacher, and he's got the gift of the gab, I say. So people will be really entertained, and you'll learn a lot from it.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.